There's a grain of truth in the old nothing good happens at night idea. That being said, worse things happen during the day. And the government stepping in to try and correct these bad things happening at night has made them set up curfews in many different states for juveniles. I believe that these curfew rules have not only made these kids less mature and created more crime in the cities, but has also hindered all these teens' ability to mature and to become and form into proper adults. So, I believe that parents should be able to set up curfews for their kids instead of the government. The government should have to step out because it ends up creating more rebellion, theft, and less growth in these kids. Livestrong.com has a great article that talks about all the negatives that the government placing a restriction and curfew on these kids has. It robs the teenagers of the ability to develop negotiation skills. Whereas if the parent is creating this curfew, the teenager at least has some leeway. They can try and prove their point on why they should be up past a certain time. It also creates a lot of rebellion. So anger from the government-imposed curfew can lead to destructive behavior and defiance, and it may decrease the maturity of these kids. It also takes away a lot of their independence. I know in Atlanta, we have a curfew of 12 p.m. for driving before age 18, but everybody breaks it because how are they going to get caught? If the cop pulls you over because you look young, that's discriminatory. So people just don't really follow that rule, and if you do end up getting caught, it's never good. But it's just one of those things where it's much better if it's set up by your parents, because what if you need to go somewhere after 12? What if you have to run to the store to grab something? What if your mom needs to be taken to the hospital, etc.? It just isn't a good situation. Government interference also just is not good. The family should be able to make the decision and not the government. Teens have their own beliefs, and they're forming their own opinions at this age. And giving these hard, set down rules is not going to help them form these ideas and these opinions so that they can become their own people. Green Garage also mentions that it gives parents a false sense of security. So if they know their kid's going to be home by 9, they'll probably think that nothing's happening to them. But in between those hours is when the most crime is committed. Juvenile crimes are higher after school on weekdays and around 7 to 9 p.m. on weekends. That means that curfew may provide little benefit to deter from delinquency. These kids are going to commit these crimes either way. It doesn't matter if there's a curfew set from 8 p.m. to 9 a.m. The kids are just going to find a different time and or a different place to commit these crimes. As I mentioned before, it hinders maturity. They don't allow the teenagers to deal with the real world effectively. And they also have to abide to avoid punishment, which is never good when they should be able to create their own path and figure out life their own way. Obviously, that doesn't mean staying up until 2 a.m., but it does mean having a little bit more leeway and say in those different areas of their life. The last two things I want to mention. It's unconstitutional, and it's also discrimination. So the government setting up a curfew gives them the right to interfere with families' privacy and chosen parenting methods. Curfew restricts everyone under the age of 18, whether or not they're rebellious or delinquent. Even the good kids are punished, and that's just unconstitutional. It's also discriminatory. Some kids can't hold down graveyard shifts because of this curfew. That may be money that these kids desperately need to support their families. So they can't have these shifts because they're going to be out past the given curfew. Authorities also categorize those who are out late to be delinquents, when maybe they're providing for their family, maybe they have an early swim practice, maybe they have a late swim practice. It doesn't matter. Kids are out late for various different reasons, and punishing all kids in the same way for different types of crimes may not be the best idea. Obviously, I do know that there are some cons, and people do see some good in having this curfew set up. A lot of parents believe that imposing this government-imposed rule means that all kids will follow it. Well, let's say one parent's more slack than the other. The parent's not going to get mad at them if they're breaking the government-imposed rules, even if they don't get caught. Whereas other parents, it's going to be a lot tighter. So I guess for the parents' peace of mind, it does protect kids from criminals and bad behavior, from them seeing it. They think it's protecting them from them being exposed to it, but it's really not, because crimes happen all day, all the time. It also creates more of a structured life for the teenagers. They go to school, they come home, do their homework, they can go out, but they have to be home by this time. And some parents may think that all kids are coming home at this time because of the curfew, but a lot of parents can be a lot more slack with it, and their kids are staying out late, which may make the other parents' kids want to stay out late as well. And there's been a lot of different data showing that there's a lot more issues with imposing these curfews than not imposing these curfews. So during the flash mob epidemic, the Philadelphia mayor extended a 9 p.m. curfew on Friday and Saturday nights for all unaccompanied minors because of that. The city already had a curfew at 9 p.m. for 13 and under, and for 10:30 for 13 to 17-year-olds. And it only displaced the crime to a different time of day and a different place, as I mentioned earlier it would. Also in Detroit, after adopting a youth curfew, crime dropped 6% during the times that the curfews were set up, from 10 p.m. to 9 a.m., but it increased 13% in the mid-afternoon. So that's a 7% increase in crime when you really don't need it. But setting up that curfew makes these kids want to break these rules. So Newswork data also talks about how 80% of juvenile offenses take place between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m., which is outside almost all curfews. So these kids are going to commit these crimes whether or not there's a curfew. Lastly, Michael Males found out in California that juvenile arrest for non-curfew crimes increased 53% during school months when the curfew was enforced, and went down 12% in July and August when curfew was not enforced. So that being said, government-imposed curfew only causes more crime, just in a different time of day. Whereas parental enforced curfew gives options for these teens in so many different areas. So these teens have the ability to practice their negotiation skills with their parents. They learn to trust their parents, and their parents learn to trust them. And they just are all the time much better in what they're doing because they have this situation set up with their parents, and they don't have to be home right at 10 o'clock. If they have to go work a shift and their shift goes till 10:30, they don't have to be scared that they're going to get pulled over driving home because they needed that extra 30 minutes of money, etc. So I've left on your seat a little handout just about how to talk to your kids when you're going to talk to them about setting up a curfew. Just a few notes on that. So make sure your child has a say. Make sure it's a negotiation and not a lecture. Rediscuss it every year, because every year brings new maturity to these kids. And give them freedom, but make sure they're safe. So maybe use the Find My Friends app and just have a tracker on them. Say, you can stay out till 12. I just need to know where you are. I'm not going to do it all the time. I just need to know for safety reasons. Thank you so much, and I hope you have this conversation with your kids soon.